A homeless boy had only one piece of bread, his last meal of the day. But when he saw a broken woman weeping in the rain, he gave it all away. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know what would happen next. But that one act of kindness would change both their lives forever. Welcome to our channel Truth Turn Stories, where real-life truths turn into powerful lessons. If this story speaks to you, subscribe and support the journey. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change two lives forever. On a cold, rain-soaked evening in a forgotten corner of the city, a 10-year-old boy named Eli walked alone through streets that most people hurried past without a second glance. He wore a thin jacket 2 sizes too big, its sleeves hanging past his small hands. His shoes were worn through at the soles, letting the rain seep in with every step. But none of that mattered to Eli anymore. He had learned to survive. He had learned to endure. And most importantly, he had learned that even when you have almost nothing, you can still choose to care. Clutched tightly in his hands was a single piece of bread. It wasn't much, just a small roll he had been given at the community shelter earlier that day. It was his only meal. His stomach had been growling for hours, reminding him with every step how hungry he was. Eli had been living on his own for as long as he could remember. No parents, no family, just the kindness of strangers and the occasional warmth of a shelter bed. He spent his days collecting bottles and cans, turning them in for a few pennies, enough to survive one more day. Most kids his age were worried about homework or video games. Eli worried about where he would sleep when the shelter was full. He worried about staying warm when the temperature dropped. He worried about making it through another week. But despite everything, his eyes still carried something most people had long forgotten. Hope, compassion, a stubborn belief that the world could still be good. The rain fell harder now, drumming against the pavement like 1,000 tiny fingers. The streets were almost empty. Everyone else had rushed home to their warm houses and hot meals. But not Eli. He walked slowly, carefully protecting his bread from the rain, thinking about finding a dry spot under a bridge where he could finally eat. His mouth watered just thinking about it. He imagined tearing into that soft bread, filling the aching emptiness in his belly. Just a few more blocks, he told himself. Just a little further. As he rounded the corner near an old abandoned building, he stopped. There, huddled against the cold brick wall, was a woman. She was trembling. Her clothes were torn and stained with mud and rain. Her hair hung in wet tangles around her face. She wasn't just sitting. She was weeping, deep, broken sobs that seemed to come from somewhere far inside her soul. She whispered to herself, words Eli couldn't quite hear, but he could feel the weight of her pain. It hung in the air like the rain itself. Her face was hollow, her cheeks sunken, her eyes distant and lost. She looked like someone who had given up, like someone who had nothing left, like someone the world had forgotten. Eli stood there, frozen. His stomach growled again, louder this time, a painful reminder of his own hunger. He looked down at the bread in his hands. It was all he had. If he gave it away, he wouldn't eat until tomorrow, maybe longer. The shelter didn't always have enough food for everyone. Sometimes he went 2 days without a proper meal. The smart thing would be to walk away, to save himself, to survive. That's what most people would do. That's what anyone would understand. He was just a child. He had nothing. No one would blame him for keeping what little he had. But Eli had never been the kind of boy who walked away. His heart wouldn't let him. Slowly he stepped forward. His small feet splashed in the puddles as he approached her. The rain poured down harder, as if testing his resolve. The woman didn't even notice him at first. She was too lost in her grief, too buried in whatever pain had brought her to this cold, wet street. Without saying a word, Eli knelt down beside her. The rain soaked through his jacket, chilling him to the bone, but he didn't care. Gently, carefully, as if handling something precious, he placed the bread into her shaking hands. She looked up, her eyes wide with shock. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The rain, the cold, the darkness, everything faded away. Their eyes met. Hers were filled with disbelief, red and swollen from crying. His were filled with quiet kindness, the kind that comes from a pure heart untouched by bitterness. Something flickered across her face. Recognition, confusion, wonder. She stared at him as if he were an angel sent from another world. Her lips parted, trying to form words, but nothing came out. She reached out toward him, her hand trembling as if she wanted to touch his face, to make sure he was real, to thank him, to ask him why. But Eli had already started to walk away. He didn't need thanks. He didn't need anything in return. He just needed to know that someone else wouldn't go hungry tonight. As he disappeared into the rain, his small figure fading into the gray mist, the woman sat there, clutching the bread to her chest. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the rain. And for the first time in years, something inside her began to stir. Hope. Days turned into weeks, and life continued for Eli just as it always had. He woke up each morning in the crowded orphanage, made his small bed with care, and stepped out into the world with nothing but hope in his heart. Most children his age would have grown bitter. They would have asked why life had dealt them such a difficult hand, why no family came for them, why they had to struggle while others had so much. But not Eli. He carried his circumstances like a quiet dignity, never complaining, never asking for pity. Instead, he chose something far more powerful. He chose kindness. Every day, Eli walked the same streets, collecting bottles and cans to earn a few coins. But along the way, he always found time to help. There was Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman who lived on the third floor of the old apartment building. Her knees were bad, and climbing stairs with heavy grocery bags made her wince with pain. Eli would see her struggling and rush over without being asked. He would carry her bags all the way up, refusing the coins she tried to press into his small hands. He would just smile, wave, and disappear back down the stairs. Then there was Mr. Rashid, the blind newspaper vendor who sat on the corner of 5th Street. Eli would stop by and read him the headlines, describe the weather, tell him about the people passing by. It made the old man's day feel less lonely. Even the stray dogs knew Eli. The ones that others shooed away or ignored, he treated like friends. He would share whatever scraps of food he managed to find, breaking his own small meals into pieces so they wouldn't go hungry. He scratched behind their ears and spoke to them softly, telling them they were good, that they mattered. And when strangers walked past him without a glance, without acknowledging his existence, Eli still smiled. He still said good morning. He still believed that people were good, even when they didn't see him. Back at the orphanage, the caretakers noticed. Mrs. Thompson, the head caretaker, would watch Eli from the window and shake her head in wonder. She had seen so many children come through those doors. Some were angry, some were sad, some had shut down completely. But Eli was different. He gave more than he had. He loved more than he received. And while she admired him deeply, she also worried. She worried that the world would take advantage of his gentle heart, that someone would hurt him because he trusted too easily. She prayed every night that life would be kind to this boy who deserved so much more than he had been given. One evening, after a long day of helping and wandering, Eli returned to the orphanage tired and hungry. He climbed the stairs to the boys' dormitory, ready to collapse onto his thin mattress. But when he reached his bed, he noticed something unusual. A small piece of paper, folded carefully, tucked beneath his pillow. His heart skipped. No one ever left him notes. No one ever singled him out. With trembling fingers, he unfolded the paper and read the words written in neat handwriting. "You gave me hope when I had none. I'm searching for you, that was all. No name, no signature, no explanation." Eli's heart pounded in his chest. He read the words again and again, trying to make sense of them. Who could have written this? Who was searching for him? And then, Like a flash of lightning, the memory returned. The rain, the woman, the bread. Could it be her? Did she remember him? Was she really looking for him? His hands shook as he held the note. 1,000 questions flooded his mind. What did she want? Why was she searching? And how did she even know where he lived? Meanwhile, across town, in a part of the city Eli had never seen, that same woman walked the streets with a purpose she hadn't felt in years. Her name was Anna. She had cleaned herself up. Her hair was washed and tied back. Her clothes were simple but neat. But most importantly, her eyes were no longer empty. They were filled with determination. In her hand she carried a faded photograph. It was old, creased, worn from being held too many times. The image showed a baby, no more than a few months old, wrapped in a blue blanket, a tiny birthmark visible on his wrist. Her baby. The child she had lost years ago, the child she had been told was gone forever. She stopped every person she passed, showed them the photograph, asked if they had seen a boy about 10 years old, with kind eyes and a gentle heart. Most people shook their heads and walked away. But Anna didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Because that night in the rain, when a small boy gave her his only piece of bread, something inside her had awakened. She had seen his face. She had looked into his eyes. And deep in her soul, she knew. Somehow, impossibly, wonderfully, she knew. That boy might just be the son she had been searching for all along. Weeks passed like slow-moving clouds, each day filled with anticipation and questions that had no answers. Eli kept the mysterious note tucked safely in his pocket, reading it over and over, wondering if he would ever know who had written those words. He continued his daily routines, helping neighbors, feeding stray animals, smiling at the world even when it didn't smile back. But now, there was something different in his heart, a tiny flicker of possibility, a whisper of hope that maybe, just maybe, someone out there was looking for him, someone who cared. Then one afternoon, everything changed. Eli was in the orphanage common room, helping younger children with their homework, when Mrs. Thompson appeared in the doorway. Her face was pale, her hands clasped together tightly. Behind her stood a woman. She looked nervous, fragile, like she might shatter at any moment. Her eyes scanned the room frantically, searching every face. And then they landed on Eli. She froze. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her knees buckled, and she grabbed the door frame to keep from falling. Mrs. Thompson rushed to steady her, concern flooding her voice, but the woman couldn't speak. She could only stare at the small boy across the room. Eli looked up. Recognition struck him like lightning. It was her, the woman from the rain, the one he had given his bread to. But she looked different now, clean, healthy. Her eyes were no longer hollow. They were filled with something powerful and overwhelming. Tears streamed down her face as Mrs. Thompson gently guided her into the room. The other children fell silent, sensing something important was happening. Eli stood slowly, his heart pounding so hard he thought everyone could hear it. The woman walked toward him, trembling with every step, clutching something tightly in her hand. When she finally stood before him, she whispered his name, Eli. He nodded, confused, wondering how she knew. With shaking hands, she held out a faded photograph. It showed a baby, tiny and wrapped in a soft blue blanket. Eli stared at it, not understanding. Then she spoke, her voice breaking. "This is you. This is my baby." The room went completely silent. Mrs. Thompson gasped softly. Eli's mind raced, trying to make sense of her words. The woman, whose name was Anna, knelt down so she was eye level with him. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small silver locket. With trembling fingers, she opened it. Inside was another picture of the same baby, and in the photo, clear as day, was a tiny birthmark on the infant's wrist, a small crescent-shaped mark. Anna gently took Eli's hand and turned it over. There, on his wrist, was the exact same mark, the same shape, the same place. Eli's breath caught in his throat. He looked from his wrist to the locket, then to Anna's face. She was sobbing now, tears of joy and pain and relief all mixed together. "You're my son," she whispered. "You're my baby boy." The words hung in the air like a miracle. Mrs. Thompson covered her mouth, her own eyes filling with tears. The other children watched in stunned silence. Anna's story poured out in broken sentences between sobs. Years ago, when she was young and vulnerable, she had been with a man she thought she loved, but he was cruel, controlling. When Eli was born, she had never felt such joy. She had held him, kissed his tiny face, memorized every detail. But her partner had other plans. One night he took the baby while she slept. When she woke, Eli was gone. The man told her their son had died, that there had been an accident. He showed her false papers, convinced her it was true. Devastated and broken, Anna had believed him. She searched anyway, refusing to accept it, but every door closed in her face. Years passed, she fell into despair, lost everything, and ended up on that cold street corner, ready to give up on life entirely. Until a small boy appeared in the rain, a boy with kind eyes who gave her his only piece of bread, a boy who reminded her that goodness still existed, that hope was still possible. That bread didn't just feed her body, it fed her soul. It gave her a reason to keep going, to start searching again. And as she looked at that boy's face that rainy night, something deep inside her had stirred. A mother's instinct, an impossible hope. She began investigating, asking questions, following trails that had long gone cold. And finally, after weeks of searching, she found him. Eli's eyes flooded with tears. His whole life he had wondered why he was alone, why no one wanted him, why he had been abandoned. He had carried that pain silently, never complaining, but always feeling the weight of it. Now, standing before this woman, his mother, he finally understood. He hadn't been abandoned. He had been stolen, and his mother had never stopped loving him. She'd never stopped searching. Anna opened her arms and Eli fell into them, sobbing. They held each other as if they would never let go, and in that moment, two broken pieces finally became whole. The orphanage staff wiped their tears. The children watched in wonder, and somewhere beyond the walls, the universe whispered a truth as old as time. Love always finds its way home. The embrace lasted forever and not long enough. Anna held Eli as if letting go would make him disappear again. Her tears soaked into his shirt. His small arms wrapped around her with a strength that surprised them both. Around them, the orphanage staff stood frozen, tissues pressed to their faces, witnessing a miracle they had only dreamed about. Mrs. Thompson wept openly, her heart swelling with a joy she hadn't felt in years. The other children watched with wide eyes, some smiling, some crying, all of them understanding that something beautiful and rare was happening right before them. This wasn't just a reunion. This was proof that lost things could be found, that broken hearts could heal, that hope was never foolish. In the weeks and months that followed, Eli's life transformed in ways he had never imagined possible. Anna took him home to a small but cozy apartment she had worked hard to secure. It wasn't fancy. The furniture was simple, mostly secondhand. But to Eli, it was a palace. He had his own bed with clean sheets that smelled like lavender. He had a small desk by the window where sunlight streamed in every morning. He had a mother who made him breakfast, who asked about his day, who tucked him in at night and told him she loved him. For the first time in his life, Eli understood what it felt like to belong. Anna had rebuilt her life piece by piece. After that rainy night when Eli gave her bread, she had found the strength to pull herself out of the darkness. She got help from a local community center, found a job at a bakery and saved every penny. But more than that, she found purpose. She began volunteering with organizations that reunited missing children with their families. She shared her story at support groups, giving hope to other parents who had lost their children. Her pain had become her power. Her brokenness had become her mission. And now, with Eli by her side, she felt complete. But even with all this new happiness, Eli remained the same kind-hearted boy he had always been. He didn't forget where he came from. He didn't forget the cold nights, the hunger, the loneliness. If anything, those memories made him more compassionate. He still helped elderly neighbors carry their groceries. He still fed the stray dogs in the park. He still smiled at strangers and offered help to anyone who needed it. Anna watched him with pride, amazed that despite everything he had suffered, he had never let bitterness take root in his heart. He had chosen love. He had chosen kindness, and that choice had brought her back to him. Months later, the community center held an event celebrating families who had been reunited. Anna and Eli were invited to share their story. The room was packed with people, all of them eager to hear about the miracle that had brought a mother and son back together. Eli stood on the small stage, his hand in Anna's, and looked out at the crowd. He was nervous, but his mother squeezed his hand gently, giving him courage. He took a breath and spoke, his young voice clear and strong. "I gave her bread because I knew hunger," he said. "I didn't know she was my mom. I just knew she needed help. But love always finds its way home." The room erupted in applause. People stood clapping and wiping tears from their eyes. Anna looked down at her son, her heart overflowing. She leaned close and whispered into his ear, words only he could hear. "You saved me before I could save you." Eli looked up at her and smiled, that same gentle smile that had lit up even his darkest days. They held each other as the applause continued, two souls who had found each other against impossible odds. As the event continued and people shared their own stories of loss and reunion, one truth echoed through the room: kindness is never wasted. Every act of love, no matter how small, plants a seed. You may not see it grow immediately. You may never know the full impact of your compassion. But somewhere, somehow, that seed takes root. It grows in the darkness. It pushes through the soil. And sometimes, when you least expect it, it blooms into something more beautiful than you ever imagined. Sometimes that seed brings back everything you've lost, and sometimes it brings back even more. Eli had given away his only bread on a rainy night, expecting nothing in return. He had simply seen someone in pain and chosen to help. That one act of selfless kindness had saved a life, sparked a search, and ultimately reunited a family that had been torn apart by cruelty and lies. His compassion had come full circle, returning to him 100-fold. He had given bread. He had received a mother. He had offered hope. He had gained a home. And in doing so, he had reminded everyone who heard his story of a simple but powerful truth. When you give with a pure heart, when you love without expecting anything back, the universe has a way of remembering. And love, no matter how long it takes, always finds its way home.